And welcome to the Barry Foster Show, now on YouTube, originating from the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. Now, if you have any ideas or suggestions for people you'd like us to interview or topics you'd like us to broach, please let us know. Drop us a line at the Barry Foster Show at Gmail, or put them in the comments below. Here at the Barry Foster Show on YouTube, we'll be putting up new programming on a regular basis, Monday through Friday, and please subscribe. Doesn't cost a dime, and whether you have a Gmail account or not, there is a way. If you don't have a Gmail account, you can open up an account and subscribe and join our pages at the Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. That would be very helpful. John Larsen in the studios with us this morning, and before we went on the air, talking a little bit about RFK and his Senate hearings. And one of the nice things about these Senate hearings is that usually gives the senators a chance to bloviate and get stuff for their campaign ads. But now, we're seeing the other side of that, and he took a couple of them to the woodshed, especially Elizabeth Warren. I didn't realize she took almost $900,000 in campaign donations from Big Pharma.
Yes, and Bernie Sanders too. Bernie Sanders has a big pot of gold that came from them.
Yeah, I mean, he told that one senator, you sat here for 20, 30 years when all these things were happening, and you did nothing. You didn't open your mouth. And I've heard a lot of people say they were very disappointed that some of the Republican senators didn't jump to RFK's defense. But from what I've seen, he didn't need any help,
There's some Republicans that take as much money as the Democrats from all these different organizations. So that's one of the problems. If you open your mouth, then you open yourself up for some scrutiny, and they don't want that.
Well, RFK has been doing the Donald Trump in there. He is number one. He went to these Senate hearings, and this has given him a chance to have a platform where the mainstream media and other people have to pay attention to him as well. But also, I had not realized that he went ahead and fired the Centers for Disease Control Director, Susan Monterez, and when he fired her, a bunch of other people quit as well. They followed her out the door, and I saw one commentator that said, "Well, you know why they left, don't you?" And I said, "Why?" Because they call it government interference, but they're getting found out. Apparently, there's some investigations coming.
Oh, I think there is, and I think, again, hopefully, I believe that they are going to touch some real hot buttons here shortly. But again, in D.C., if the trial were to go in D.C., they have better be ironclad, positively true with their evidence, because the D.C. courts will arbitrarily not convict anybody that Trump and his administration, the DOJ, want to put forward. They won't.
I think it's going to go through the process of the lower court, the appeals court, the up, and it's going to go to the Supreme Court, which to their benefit, the good. They have been following Donald. They've been ruling in favor of Donald Trump. So yeah, it may take a while, and they're dragging their feet, and they're hoping it will take a while. But I think that in the end, he and RFK and all these people will be proved to be right.
Well, it's going to be now. And I watched Victor Davis Hanson talk about this yesterday, on one of his podcasts. But Chelsea Clinton got $84 million from U.S. AID.
I've heard that, and I haven't been able to confirm that. But if Victor Davis Hanson says it,
she did.
I'm with you.
Now, the thing of it is, of course, she released a statement about 6 paragraphs long and said that all of this was part of the Clinton Foundation, and it all went to support very good natural causes. This money, I was just the arbitrator of this money. I just funneled it from my dad and my mother to the organizations that really needed it. Mm-hmm. If you can believe that, then I'll sell you
a big bridge.
Whatever, But when it comes to the Clintons, there's very little that they did, I think, that was on the legal side of things.
I'll tell you that more of this is getting uncovered, and it's almost, there's so much that you can't keep your track on everything. But I was glad to see RFK. I was glad to hear about this CDC, and more has been focused back onto the pandemic that came and how the distancing didn't work, how the masks didn't work. And I saw a guy who was trying to talk about this in a setting with more than a panel setting, and this one woman just started shouting over him. That's not true. That's not true. And she just kept trying to talk over him. And that's what happens when they get caught. When they get caught, they try to shut you up by talking over so nobody can hear what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But I think that in time, this will all come out, because there were school children lost a year, maybe 2 years of education because of what happened in the schools. Yes. You know, I mean, there were people who lost trillions of dollars, in the economy. It just went to nowhere. And Donald Trump is trying to go ahead and put that all back together again, which is a daunting task.
Yes, absolutely. And there's no doubt, I think Fauci at the head of this, okay, but all of his minions below him were tied in with the drug companies. They were tied into forcing people to do things that weren't any good, that didn't have any value, okay? And now, what they're really, and it took this long, but 5 or 6 years after COVID, they're beginning to find out that a lot of these people that are dying at a very early age died because they took the COVID shots. And now this is coming to light. More and more stories are coming to light about this. And so that even adds more fuel to the fire about why this whole thing was not good.
My wife found a statistic that I found, I didn't have to research it, but I found unbelievable, that the United States has 4% of the world's population, but had 20% of the COVID deaths. Wow. And I told her, I said, that statistic would not surprise me. I can't corroborate it, but that statistic would not surprise me. But I think that they're also going back. I saw someone who went back into the 1990s, maybe it was the 80s, the 90s, I think, when they had the swine flu epidemic. And one of the mainstream media, I think it was ABC, went in. It was Sam Donaldson, was going in and asking this big pharma about some of the things they found out about the swine flu vaccination, which I didn't realize was mandated. I never got one. It was apparently it was mandated, but nobody came knocking on my door saying, "Have you got it yet?" And no, I didn't get it. But they found out that there were things that were wrong with the swine flu vaccine, and they didn't include it on their report. That was conveniently eliminated. That information was eliminated, which is something RFK talked about. They found out that young black males who were immunized at a very early age were hundreds of times more likely to have autism than males who waited, who got it later on. And they said that you took that out of your report. You didn't put that in your report. And they get real quiet because they get the information. He's got the information. He's got them good to go, and then they change the subject. They go someplace else.
Well, I think, and it's too bad that he's got a speaking issue, okay,
yes,
because of something
that warble in his speech,
and so
yes,
on. So it takes him a little while, and he sometimes has to repeat it to get it all out of there and whatnot. But I think what's happened too is the other thing. There's in any organization, you've got some good people and you've got some bad people. And I think now in this CDC and that he's gotten rid of some of the bad apples. And I think then that some of the good people that are being frustrated over the years because they knew the corruption that was going on but couldn't do anything about it, now have a voice and are willing to speak up. I think, if not to him, to some of his leaders, that this happened. Do you know that this person was involved?
And you wonder how much documents have been shredded.
Oh.
But the thing, and I was talking to Sandra about this, I said, they may have shred documents, but if it's anywhere on the internet, then it's there forever. Mm-hmm. Someone will find it.
Right.
You can't hide and especially on the net. It may be difficult to recoup, but you can recoup.
Well, I think the other thing he's done the Doge thing on the CDC.
Oh, yes.
I mean, besides stopping expenditures of things that were supposed to be funded, which he believes are illegitimate, all right, and then getting rid of some of the bad apples and getting rid of people that were not necessary. They were just holding down a position, okay, because somebody gave it to them. So I think he's really done a big Doge thing on the CDC, which in the end, over time, will begin to save this country a lot of unnecessary funding.
Oh yeah, and the other thing that he's done, and I'm starting to see, and some of these you think are you wonder if they're ginned up or if they're real, but there was a lady who was complaining that she was not allowed to buy certain kinds of food on her SNAP benefits. Now that money was going to come out of her own pocket, and they were planning to use that money for a trip to Disney World. But now, because she has to buy that kind of buy the stuff she can't buy with SNAP, they weren't going to be able to go to Disney World, and the family was very disappointed. And there's a woman who came on after, and she was unsympathetic. And she said, "Look," she says, "you wonder what are they buying that SNAP doesn't cover." And it's not our job to finance your trip to Disney World, okay? It's our job to get you food so you don't die. That's what SNAP is for.
Well, I think some of these producers of like soda and
liquid candy?
chips and those kind of things, which they buy prolifically,
oh yeah,
all right, are no longer going to be available on the SNAP program. So I think they're going to see a reduction in their sales because of that. And this is the whole idea. What he's trying to, RFK, what he's trying to do is make people healthy.
Yes.
And all you got to do is look at the size of people today, including children, compared to years ago. Children, and I'm talking, you see little chubby bubbies that are 2 or 3 years old.
Oh yes.
And which means that they're consuming all of these bad foods and bad drinks on a regular basis, and then they end up with childhood diabetes.
Sugars and fats.
And so it's really something that has to happen. And yes, he's taken the forefront. He's taken a lot of slings and arrows over, but in the end, I believe if he can do the things he believes are right, this country will start to turn the corner. It's amazing you talk about people that had to give up a trip, but I've seen so many of these videos of some of these women who, this one woman, she was screaming because she had to do 15 hours a week of community service.
Oh my goodness.
In order to get her SNAP benefits.
Oh, the humanity.
Hours. Yes. And she said outrageously, and she sits there, she's got long fingernails that are painted, tattoos up both arms, got a nose ring in her nose, okay, and she's complaining about having to do 15 hours a week of community service.
Let me tell you something, tattoos are expensive.
Amen.
Tattoos are very expensive.
But I mean, these are the kind of people that are jumping up and down. And this one woman, the other woman said, I thought this was going to be a benefit for life. I didn't know it had an ending on it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And by the way, did you know that Florida's going to have their own Make America Healthy? MAHA, the Florida MAHA Commission? And Casey DeSantis is going to chair it. And, okay, you're the governor's wife. Fine. All right. I'm hoping that she shares the governor's more conservative values, that this MAHA will be the idea of making people healthy, babies, the children, adults.
Well, the person that's in charge of health and welfare in the state of Florida, I can't remember his name now, but anyhow, they have rescinded the mandatory vaccination for all children.
Yes, I saw that.
So in order to, usually when you went to school, you had to get 4 or 5 or 6 different shots. Now they're saying you can still get them, but you don't have to get them. We're not forcing you to go get those in order for your child to go to school.
I did not realize when I was a kid. I had like 4 or 5. I had smallpox and polio, and I didn't realize until I read now as a senior adult that there was a big to-do about the polio and how much good it did or didn't do. But I mean, I didn't get very many. And I only got them when I was like 6, right before I went to school. Mm-hmm. You were supposed to get these immunizations, and I got them. I hated shots so much anyway, but I got them right before we went to school. I didn't have any when I was as far as I know, when I was a tiny baby. Now they said there's 76 shots that kids get for things. I mean, that's nuts. Well, that's crazy.
I think that's what RFJ Jr. is trying to say is, look, putting all of these things in your child's body, in a lot of cases, is not doing your child any good. As a matter of fact, it may make your child sicker and so on. So he wants to stop the unnecessary vaccinations of children and let them just grow up to be healthy. Because back in the day, we didn't get anywhere near the shots that they're getting today. And I think we because they also had PE in school, but we were a lot healthier than some of the kids are today that sit in front of their phone or their computer or their iPad or their screen all day long.
Well, when I was growing up, if you were one of the television children, you sat in front of the TV all day, and like on Saturday morning when we should be out and playing, they called it the cat flattening hours, where you'd watch cartoons and old westerns and things like that, So, there was times that. But there was plenty of times. I lived in an area that was, it wasn't exactly the suburbs, but we didn't have sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we had macadam roads,
right.
And a lot of us would meet up on our bicycles, and we'd ride around the neighborhood. And we had actual hills. We had to go up and down these hills, and we were gone all day. And then we'd go over to Scott Siddell's house and play football, and because they had a big backyard. Or Ned Weil had a place where they had a giant field next to the highway, and we played baseball. He called it Orchard League baseball. He kept stats and everything. Mm-hmm. But we would play, and our job was when the sun started to go down, we started to go home. And if we overstayed our welcome, all the families had different ways of like John Hardy's. They had a big bell that they would ring, and when you'd hear his bell go off, you know that you probably should start headed home. Because if my dad came out and whistled, he could whistle really loud through his teeth. And he would whistle, and you'd get 3 times, and then the phones would start ringing. Is Barry over here? Is Barry over there? Or they'd call Chuck's house, and Chuck say, oh, no, they're all over at Scott's house. And then they call Scott and say, tell Barry to come home. Okay? So, but yeah, we were out doing things, and our parents had no clue.
Right.
There was no cell phones. There was nothing like that.
Nope.
That was science fiction stuff.
Nope.
But we got fruits and vegetables. In fact, I was at the 10th anniversary for the Beauty Fit for a Queen here the other night, and we sat at a table where we didn't know any of the people, and it's probably the quietest I've ever been. I was just listening, and there was a gal who was sitting at the table with us, and she was pregnant. And she was very proud of the fact that she ate no fruits or vegetables. Now, they had a golden baked potato. They had caramelized carrots. They had chicken cordon bleu. Okay, and she was one of the men. I assume it was either her husband or her significant other. Said, "Don't you want your kids?" "Oh, I don't eat fruits or vegetables." Don't, and you're pregnant. Don't you care about your kid? I kept shut. I kept my mouth shut. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to ask any unpleasant questions.
Nope.
But I was astonished, and this girl was pretty good sized gal. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's very sad, because the kids now, we got a candy bar. That was a treat.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Or potato chips. Well, that was something that you have on Saturday when you have hot dogs. That was, like something special. You can get that with just regular meals.
Nope.
But now that seems to be par for the course.
Some cases it may be the meal.
Yeah,
it may be the meal, okay? And I've told the story many times when I was a paper boy, okay? And the route kept getting bigger and bigger. I kept getting new customers, and it kept spreading. And when I had a road with 3 or 4 customers down there, I'd find a little kid, and I would say, look, if you deliver those 4 houses down there, I'll give you a candy bar. And it worked. Mm-hmm. It worked. Okay? Kids would do a lot of things for a candy bar. Okay?
My wife took care of she was a mentor, a tutor in one of the schools. And to get the kids to pay attention, that she had this little glass jar with a spout on it. And if the kid was paying attention and they're doing what, she'd walk around and she'd give an M&M. Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised what a kid will do for an M&M.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. And a little sugar rush there. Yep. So she didn't give a lot of that stuff. She said, I hate to give that stuff out. Because she's a self-described nutty person.
Yep.
But she wanted to keep them on task, and that helped to keep them on task.
I want to just jump quickly into something here that you and I discussed earlier, and that was a friend of ours, Alex Newman, writes for Liberty Sentinel, amongst many, many things. But anyhow, he put out a report 2 days ago. It says, it talks about equitable grading. And this has now become, I guess, the thing in a lot of school systems across the country. And what it is, they take these kids that either don't want to learn or can't learn for whatever reason, and they use equitable grading. In other words, they'll grade them higher just because they can't do it or don't do it, all right? Even to the point where kids that do nothing are getting 50%.
Instead of a zero.
Instead of a zero, they get 50%. Either they don't come to class, or they come to class and they just sit there and play games. But they don't concentrate, they don't learn, they don't want to be part of the system, and so on. So they'll give them a 50% so it doesn't look like they did nothing. And in reality, and they're doing this mainly to kids that are having failing situations. Either they don't care about education, they don't want to be in school, or they come there and they're just plain lazy, or they're so far behind where they should be at their age that they aren't able to do the work. So those kids are getting equitable grading, and it's part of the equality system, if you will.
Is that happening here in Highlands County, do you know?
That I don't know, but what I've done, I reached out to one of our school board members and asked them the question, and they told me that they'll get back to me with what they find out. I don't think it is. I would be very surprised if it was, but he said that this is spreading across the country, and about half of the school systems in the country now are now using this equitable grading.
I had heard that a couple of decades back, this was part of Common Core. And we've gotten rid of Common Core here, but we have listeners here across the Fruita Plain. I would like you to call your school system and drop in the comments here below. Does your school use this equity grading formula? Because that is very unfair to kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I remember when they lowered the and you'll appreciate this, they lowered the requirements for recruits to get in the Army and get in the armed services, and they were able to do things more. But when they got into real battle situations, it doesn't matter what you've got to be able to do certain things in a battle situation. And if your requirements have been lowered, you're not going to be able to perform in a battle situation, and that could cost you your life.
Well, one thing that, and not to jump back on it, but at the meeting that Trump had with Pete Hegseth and announcing that, we're going to be the Department of War, Hegseth said that every one of the branches in the military now have a waiting list of people wanting to get in. And he said that has changed so much from the Biden administration, where everything was, equity, inclusion, and all of that. They've done away with all of that. Matter of fact, in the Naval Academy or the West Point, they removed the picture. Biden administration removed the picture of one of the old Civil War generals. Mm-hmm. They have put that back because
Robert
they did
Lee.
it.
Yes.
They did that because they didn't want to make anybody feel bad about having a so-called racist photograph hanging in one of these facilities and so on. So that's how far off the track they went. And I can't imagine when we went to war, were in war, if you will, all right, and had that kind of an attitude by a lot of the people that were in the service. The only reason they came in was, again, if you take a look at, they had pictures, and I've seen these pictures, of some of these major generals that are now transgender. They're dressing like women. They're men and dressing like women. I'm hoping that they've gotten rid of all of those out of the system, out of the military, and so on. But yeah, I was glad to see that he said recruitment is up in every branch of the service.
Well, that's good to know, and it's good to see that they're restoring what it takes to be in. I mean, it is a privilege to be a member of the military, and you have to be in. They want the best and the brightest in the military to either A, defend our country, or B, make war. And may not be in that order, but at any rate, it's good that they do that, and I'm glad to see that you have an administration currently that is headed back in that direction on all fronts.
Yes.
On all fronts. And in fact, I saw something the other day that I thought was, and again, we have listeners across the Fruita Plain, but it said every school should have a fix-it lab where students learn how to repair things, everything from clothes to bikes to electronics, to find out that everything is not disposable. One of the reasons that Sandra and I shop at thrift shops and garage sales, and I look for older things because a lot of the times things that were older can be fixed. Mm-hmm. That I can go in And I've told her, I said, I'm not going to buy anything that either A, doesn't work right now, or B, doesn't have the parts that I need to stick on something else and make it work. Because I'm not real bright. I can take an old part out and put a new part on. I did that with a lawnmower. I can take an old belt off, put a new belt on. I take the old blades off, put new blades on. And I think kids, if they don't have a father like I had, who would bring me out there, and it was my job to hold the flashlight, but he would explain to me what was going on,
right?
So that I would know. Now they make things so they're not reparable, or you have to have the company come and do it.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw a Facebook meme that showed this electronics board, and it said, if you can read this, you've violated your warranty. And I probably would have, but because I have people, but we need to have kids learn more in school, and we've talked about this before, about we don't need art history majors, we need plumbers, we need carpenters, we need electricians, and we need people, and if you want to learn how to fix stuff at your house, buy one.
Well, the other part to that too is that as you see the economy improve, and I believe that it will, okay, the economy improve, you're going to see a major housing boom, I think, take place. Right, in this country. And also they got to get interest rates down. That's a big part of it. Get the interest rates down at least 2 points, maybe 3, so people can afford to buy a home. Then you're going to see the need for carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and masons and all that just skyrocket, because you're going to see a lot of building going on. And I'm hoping that we can get back to where we can build houses today that people can afford. Most people cannot afford a $350,000 to $550,000 house. They need to get houses down to good houses down to $150,000 to $200,000.
Well, I heard Victor Davis Hanson talking about how the Fed refuses to lower interest rates, and apparently Trump now is making a short list to replace Jerome Powell when his term comes up. I think in March of next year is when it comes up, and he's going to look for somebody who's a little more friendly. It's all taking time, and it's time we don't really have. If the Fed could save us $1 trillion or $1 billion a day in interest rates, if they would in interest money to help put this country right. But I think there's people who they hate Trump more than they love the country.
Well, I don't know if you followed the story of Lisa Cook, who's the one they're trying to get rid of now.
Yes.
All right. I mean, the more they dig into her background, the worse it gets. All right. She was a plagiarizer in college. She was a plagiarizer. She stole a lot of her papers that she supposedly wrote because she's got a doctorate degree. All right. But her education was never in economy. It wasn't in economy. So she didn't have any real background in financials, to any great degree, to be a Fed member, board member. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I think the walls are kind of coming down around her. I know initially they got mortgage fraud. Okay, fine, that's one thing. But if they can tie all this other stuff into it, she certainly, and again, Joe Biden said when he put her in office, I'm going to put the first black woman as one of the Fed board members.
A DEI hire.
That's right, absolutely. And what we've seen is that, unfortunately, what we've seen in some of these DEI hires were not prepared for the job. They were not.
Well, and I think that as these things come to light, I think there are other people who help facilitate those things that don't want their role to come to light. And so they may tell her, just you take one for the team here because you're going to uncover a lot of stuff that we don't want to uncover.
Well, the other thing, they found a lot of emails and postings that she put out, on X and other platforms, berating Trump. She hated Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Hated him.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there again, you've got these people that have this attitude when they come into their office or their position, and you can see then when you start digging into it that they really weren't qualified for the job.
And that's the thing. I don't really care about what you are. I mean, your race, creed, color, national origin has very little to do with it. What has to do with it is, can you do the job? And many people are running and arguably winning on the fact of who they are, or what they are, rather than who they are. And this Zohan Mondami is one of them. he's a guy who is coming out and saying, "Hey, look, I look like you, vote for me," you know.
Yeah, he's everything but okay, and there's no doubt. And the walls they're beginning to build a lot against him, but still the numbers say that he is absolutely going to be the winner, and the New York people, unknowingly or knowingly, are going to be the victim of his administration.
Well, a dear friend once told me it's hard to beat Santa Claus.
Oh, it
and
is.
and Mondami is going to be Santa Claus. Everything's going to be free. Although there's some very powerful people. There's a guy that has a big grocery chain in New York City that doesn't want municipally run grocery stores. Will they let him steal from the municipally run grocery stores, you think? Is this?
Well, that's what they did in Kansas City. One of the reasons that they closed, they've had it out there for years, but one of the reasons they recently closed up was that theft was one of their big problems.
Yeah.
Theft. I mean, it doesn't matter. Chicago, on the Miracle Mile, Chicago, what's the big watch company? Rolex. They broke into the store at 2:30 in the afternoon. 4 guys broke in and stole hundreds of thousands of Rolex watches in the middle of the day. They smashed the windows. They had these watches lined up beyond the glass. They broke the glass open, stole the watches, and then took off. Now, they caught them. Mm-hmm. They caught them in a getaway car, okay? But they did it in broad daylight.
Yeah, I mean, that is not an unusual thing. And I have mixed emotions over this because, number one, you don't want to see the number one city based on capitalism put under communist rule. Okay, no. And Mondami he's a communist. He's self-admitted. Now he's running for office. He's really not a communist, but he is a communist. But then does he become the poster child of the midterms and say, "Do you want your city to look like this?" You know, here and begin to tie these far leftists to this guy and get your red wave, your red tsunami that we were promised in the past. You know, do we get a House and Senate that really helps Donald Trump cement a lot of the things that he needs to have done? You know, do we see that? Is that the silver lining outside the big black cloud?
Well, a lot of Democrats are upset because neither Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries will endorse Mondami. They say,
really?
Oh, yes, they put it right to them, both of them, and said, "Are you endorsing him as a candidate?" And they give the old word salad. Okay, they'll say all the words in the world, but they'll never say, "Yes, I endorse him." And they know that he's toxic. They know that politically he's toxic, and they know that whether he wins or loses, it's going to be a defeat for the Democrats because ultimately, you're right, free grocery stores will not last. He wants free bus service too. Free bus service will not last. So the city of New York is in debt beyond belief now. How much further in debt is he going to take them?
Well, as far as he can. You know, I mean, and that's the thing is that they do all these things and then leave it for the conservatives to come and clean up. And then the conservatives are the stern doctor that says, look, you can't be eating chips and candy bars anymore, and you got to get out and exercise, and none of this is any fun, you know.
Victor Davis Hanson said something the other day which really made me think about it, and he said that, the world and the United States always get upside down because you have somebody come along that says, I'll promise you the moon, and you won't have to pay anything for it. And he said that's when every 20, 25 years in this country, you'll get a Ronald Reagan or Donald Trump that'll have to come in and fix all the corruption and that happened for the last 25 years. And that's actually true. Ronald Reagan came in and he put the economy back in order and did a lot of good things. The one thing he did, which I didn't like, was when he agreed to let 2 million illegals become citizens in the United States.
And
I know he was taken to the cleaners by the Democrats, but like Rush always said, never trust a Democrat. Never.
For the folks who weren't alive when that happened or don't remember, what he was promised was, if you legalize these people, we promise that we'll fix it. And that is a promise that has not been kept to this day.
No.
To this day, it has not been fixed, and they have been letting more and more illegals in to undercut the economy here. and to put 25 people in a house made for 4, and it's just been very unpleasant. There's so many words I can't use.
Yeah.
It's just been awful. And this whole thing with Mondami is that New York could go broke. Remember when Ford told them they wasn't going to give them any money?
Yep.
And what they're relying on is that he can keep it going for 3 years. When Trump's out of office, they'll have somebody in here say, "Oh, sure, we'll shove a bunch of federal money in here," like Gavin Newsom with the famed high-speed train that spent billions of dollars. Not 1 foot of track was laid.
Nope. I think he's at like $38 billion so far, something like that. Yeah, and it's like I know we jump around a lot, but quick story about the SNAP program.
Yes.
I saw yesterday, and I cannot for the life of me, I cannot remember what city or state it was in, but they uncovered a $66 million SNAP fraud scheme that was perpetrated by 6 people, okay?
Wow.
One of the people worked for the federal government as an overseer of the SNAP program, preventing fraud and waste and abuse of the Fed SNAP program. She was in on it, okay? And then there was a guy who was the president of a bank or something? He was part of it too. And then they had all these other, and I assume they were illegal. It was probably 4 or 5 of them, but there were 6 people involved. $66 million fraud program on the SNAP program. Fraud. Unbelievable. But this is the kind of corruption that Elon Musk and his guys were uncovering, and I think they still are to a degree today, and so on. But the American people have been shut out from the real news many, many, many years. It was covered up, lied to us about the politicians in charge, and so on. And yet all of this stuff took place. I
would recommend to you Newsmax. I would recommend to you One America News for the breaking kind of news. I am trying to log up. I am now a member of republic.us, and I would suggest you go down there looking for stories, and if you need information on stories, I'd send it along and see if you can get somebody to write some things. Victor Davis Hanson. I'm looking forward to this Elon Musk podcast.
Yes.
I want to hear some of that.
Yeah, you got to listen to that. The first one I watched yesterday was really good, very thoughtful, very low-key, but he's all by himself, and he just sits there and talks about what he sees and what's happened. Just that there was something out there. In my head. There's so many things run through your head that you've seen or heard in the last few days.
I can tell you that there's a new act. Ashley Moody has introduced the Safe Truckers Act, which is going to have to do a lot with the English-speaking truckers and people who are fluent in reading and writing English as well. And Florida Attorney General James Youthmeyer has issued charges against Whitehawk carriers who employed that Harjinder Singh, is that the way you pronounce it, who caused that accident that killed 3 people. And so they're working on that as well. They're trying to unravel some of these stuff and trying to find out in California who all were given licenses, and Gavin Newsom is being very uncooperative about that.
I saw a video yesterday it was a truck stop, and this guy was there doing like an expose of the trucking industry or whatever. And this guy, who I assume was a person that didn't know, didn't care, couldn't speak, whatever, he forgot to bring the stanchions up as they cranked down on the trailer.
The legs, yeah.
He put those. He didn't put that up. He let them drag, and he didn't even hook up the air hoses for the brakes. And he was pulling out of the lot and going down the road.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and it's no wonder that things happen. There's been a lot more visual things lately available on YouTube and whatnot, even on television, if you will, to a degree, of some of these tractor trailer accidents, which are just horrendous. And you just look at it and you say, how the heck did he ever get there? Guys drop up into the water. One guy, it was like a skateboarder that, the medium, the barriers, the concrete barrier, he drove right up on the middle of that thing. And his whole semi-rig was sitting on top of those barriers. And you say to yourself, how did that happen?
You've got to watch every minute. We're getting up on time, but the one thing here at the end that I want to tell you that it is time now for the counties to begin to certify their millage rates. And they put out a millage rate, and then arguably, supposedly, they're supposed to lower it down as they make cuts. And here in Highlands County, a commissioner by the name of Don Elwell went and the other night was lobbying for another $250,000 cut, which it's not a lot, but in light of all the other things that they're asking for, the other raises in garbage fees and fire protection fees and the other fees that they've got, it was something. And he and Arlene Tuck voted to bring it down another $250,000, but 2 out of 5 doesn't make it. And you had Scott Kerouac and Christopher Campbell and, much to my dismay, Kevin Roberts all voted against the idea. And to me now, this gives me impetus to begin to join with Governor Ron DeSantis in the move to eliminate property taxes. And what he's going to do is he has thought about the idea of a constitutional amendment, which means 60% of Florida voters would have to vote for it. I can't see them not winning this, okay? And the elimination of property taxes would be something arguably that would be a constitutional measure, more than, let's say, pregnant pigs, for instance.
Well, the other thing is that if a lot of seniors who worked all their life to afford to retire and buy a retirement home, if you will, in the state of Florida, let's say, a large portion of the people that live here came here for that reason, a large portion. So they would certainly get a lot of the so-called seniors to sign on to that situation. So I think it would pass rather readily, just because of that fact. Yes, you're going to have some people that won't buy in, but I think seniors will definitely buy into it. Definitely.
And I think the other thing is, well, the county's going to throw their hands up and they go, well, how in the world are we going to finance all the things that we want to do? You know, and we've already seen them put in, you know, all kinds of other kinds of assessments, you know, other kinds of assessments for garbage, for fire protection. I think they can put in for police, and they've already started doing it anyway. So even if they went to the $10 million cap, they would still they'd still have other ways to raise money. So it's a two-edged sword. Will this be something that everybody has to pay, so that people will be continually outraged? I remember that my dear friend, the late Steve Roberts, here in Avon Park, they were going to put a fire assessment in, and people who had never paid one dime in property taxes now were going to have to pay this fire assessment, and they were outraged. And Steve said, well, you know, this gives everybody a chance to participate in municipal government. You get a chance to fund something in municipal government. When they did it in the city of Sebring, my friend, the late John Griffin, said, look, however much money we raise from this fire assessment, I want to back that much money out of the general fund, okay? Because we were paying for it. And so if we raised $1 million, then we back $1 million out of the general fund because it's coming in another way. So I think that if they begin to do different kinds of assessments, and people who normally didn't have to pay these things now have to pay it, you'll get more citizen involvement, because when they hit you in the wallet, it hurts a lot more than they hit somebody else in the wallet.
Especially in today's economy, because we're still recovering from the tariffs situation to a degree, but also from the inflation factor that Biden had in place. This inflation has carried forward, and now you compound it on top of it. Again, I've got to say, I've said this a few times already, I'm going to continue to say it, I really wish that Donald Trump would have a huge meeting of the major grocery store chains and the food processors. Bring them together and say, okay, your prices are quite high compared to where they were. What can we and you do to get prices down so the American people can afford their food and so on? Because that's the basics of life, is your food. And when you go to the grocery store, you see the impact of it right away.
And encouraging people to have a victory garden.
Well, whatever. I mean, it doesn't, you could do that. You could include people of that aspect also, but or even community gardens, where you have a group of people that take an acre of property and together they plant whatever and they harvest whatever.
They actually have those here.
Yeah.
Down at the Ag Center, that they've got plots, and the master gardeners will help you with that kind of thing. So, but well, we'll talk about that later. And John, again, thank you. You're the bomb.com. We appreciate you very much, and I want to remind you, you've been listening to the latest edition of the Barry Foster Show, recorded here at the Ridge Florida Studios in the City of Charm, downtown Avon Park. Any ideas or suggestions for our program, just drop us a line at the barryfostershow@gmail.com or put them in the comments below. We'll try to have new programming up here on a regular basis. Please subscribe to our YouTube page. That would help a lot. And join our pages at The Barry Foster Show on Facebook and Instagram. As we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way, this is Barry Foster, and we'll see you next time.